time to smash it up on a bi-week edition of the Monday Smash. As you hear, my voice is a little bit more like NPR than it is Fire and Brimstone, alongside the managing editor of Warchant.com. He's Ira Schofel. My name is Tom Lang, and this is the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis, where tonight we're going to be in a safe space, everyone. Welcome in. Everybody file in one by one. Maybe bring your favorite napping blanket with you, maybe a pillow that you really like, a throw pillow that you use for, again, napping purposes or just comfort purposes.
Maybe a stuffed animal from your childhood that you have in the corner of your room that makes you feel comfortable, maybe.
There you go. Whatever comfort you need, go get it. Maybe it's a bowl of soup. Go make yourself a bowl of soup right now, because what we're going to do is we're going to share here on the Monday Smash after a 1-5 start for Florida State football.
Yes, Lee. Also, sorry, Tom, but yes, Lee, we're a strong cocktail.
That is a comfort to many people. Director Ben, allegedly behind the scenes, is sipping on some vodka and juice. Now, I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I believe it to be true. Troy Noel, good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening to Kelvin. Yes, everybody file in. Let's go. Sit down. What we're going to do here tonight is share. We're going to share with one another. So bring it in the chat, and we're going to talk first about a temperature check. Ira and I spoke before the show tonight, and again, we're leaning into this. David, hello. How are you? Everybody come on in. Pierce is David. In all caps. Pierce says strong cocktail. There you go. Strong, as in the antithesis of the O-line. Yes, come on in, sit down. We're going to do a temperature check tonight on the Monday Smash about how we're feeling. Everybody in the chat, you got thoughts. You're here for a reason. You've got emotions tied to starting 1-5 in the first half of this season. Where are you right now? Are you hopeful for the youth movement? Are you still angry? Are you despondent? Are you sad? Let's bring it all in. Let us know in the chat. And I know Kayvon always wants the trilogy to be restored, and that's not going to happen, Kayvon. You can keep on dreaming. I see some emojis in the chat. Here we go. All right. William is also apologizing to Ira for ambushing him at Costco. Ira, please share. Let us know what's going on here.
William, I'm sorry. Real quick, David, great to meet you, man. That was awesome. Glad you guys got to go to an FSU game. Sorry it was this season. William, man, I felt so bad. So I talked to William at Costco, and man, I was in another planet. Like I just was. I'm going to put it on the weight of this season. I think I was just kind of weighted down by the season, and I just was kind of out of it, and I felt bad because I felt like I was not very engaging. I was definitely not very engaging, and I apologize, William. But good to see you, buddy, and hopefully next time I'll be in a better state of mind, and maybe after this hour, maybe we'll all be in a better state of mind.
You didn't tell him to F off, did you, Ira?
No, man. I just wasn't there. Like I don't know, man. I was just I was in a catatonic state. It was Friday afternoon, long week. Anyway. Yep.
Been there. Yeah, been there. Okay, so it's temperature check time. Ira is he is the wise one at Warchant. He has greater perspective. We sometimes, especially us alum, bring a little bit more emotion to the party. We've got a video right now on Warchant TV where Corey is expounding on the failures of the rushing offense. And Corey might not be an alum, but he went to games for decades. And he's kind of fired up too. So, Ira, let's take your temperature. I mean, are we running a fever here? Where are you at this point of the season as Florida State goes into a bye, going to go on the road, play Duke? Which path do you choose?
I mean, the anger part is probably harder for me to muster, like you said. Corey grew up a Florida State fan. His dad went to Florida State. He's a family of Noles. He grew up on it. So he has it. You went to FSU. Jeff went to FSU. Gene went to FSU. Matt, everybody went to FSU. I get it. So everybody has those feelings. I did not go to Florida State. I did not grow up a college football fan, oddly enough, given this is my profession. So I just don't have the same the anger part is natural to me. I'm more just like floored, stunned, bewildered. I still don't understand how this has happened. And I am I'm definitely excited that some of these young guys are getting on the field now. So you walk away from that game against Clemson where it's like you almost, I actually, after we did the wrap, I looked at Aslan and I said, like, are we okay to be kind of excited about Brock? Because I felt that way. And I felt like as Corey and I spoke, we don't usually talk before we start the wrap. We just start talking. And so, I was like, we sounded pretty positive. Is that, so it's a weird place right now because I think Brock looked amazing for what I expected Brock to do in that situation. I thought he was amazing. I really love some of the young skill players. I think there's more to come with that group. I really like that group. We've been saying it since preseason camp, but to me, it's just I'm still just flummoxed. I'm going to come up with every possible word I can come up with for what has happened. I'm not as mad as you guys are. I'm just confused.
Yeah. I think bumfuzzled was one we used early on. We burned that one early. Befuddled, stupefied. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're here, and it doesn't stop, Ira. It's like raining haymakers, just keep on coming, and it doesn't stop. My temperature, and we're going to react to yours in the chat. So Director Ben we have a little star function. He's starring them. This is a safe space. Everybody's opinion is valid in here. Come on in. We're going to share. We're going to react to it. Ira, you heard it today. I know you were listening a little earlier to the show, and I expressed this privately too, that I'm just so mad for the fans. Like, right. I'm one of them. I'm an alum like y'all, but part of my job takes that emotion out of the equation and gets into analytical mode. Like that's part of what we do. But when Florida State's down 17-0 on Saturday night, and then you hit the big play to Landon Thomas and you score on that drive, that crowd was engaged, Ira. I mean, you were there in the building, but they were yearning. They were hungering for this moment, and they know that they're walking into a building. They're paying to walk into a slaughter and look for silver linings, and yet they show up and they're enthusiastic. And that just makes me so sad, but it makes me so proud of all the people that did that made that decision. And whether you're driving in from, Thomasville, Georgia, or across the state or somewhere in the Southeast, you fly down like our friends, the Matthews, did from Chicago for their annual trip. And they came by several of the events. Like, people come a long way, and they're talking to us before the game and they're saying, just give me something. I mean, Ira, that you've fallen from 19 in a row in an ACC championship to fans just wanting to see something to hang their hat on after 5 games going into their 6th game, and then bringing it once they're inside Doak. And that makes me so mad for them. They don't deserve this. Like, this is you are absolutely right to feel angry about it. Like, that's ridiculous. What's the degree of difficulty, Ira, to go from 19 in a row to where they are now? I mean, it's really hard to find a way here after what they just did last year.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I thought the students particularly, like, I think they started chanting Brock, 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 Brock at one point, like after one of his runs, I think. And like you said, when he hit a few of the throws he hit, the check down to Landon or just, the touchdown passes, it almost felt like a liberation. Like, this can happen. Like, you can actually score points. You can actually throw and granted, they only scored 13 points. There were a lot of 3 and outs. There were a lot of bad snaps and drop passes, but the fact that your quarterback made some plays that makes you feel like, oh my gosh, he looks like he knows what he's supposed to do, and he's doing it with confidence, and he's doing it with some heart, then that's like something you can rally around. So from that standpoint, I agree with you. It stinks that this fan base has had to go through this, especially after last season's success, the season before that success, and then all of the talk coming into this year that, there's going to be a drop-off. Nobody came into the season, none of us did, thinking that they were going to be 12-0 or 13-0 again. I mean, we thought maybe you lose 2 or 3 games. If things go poorly, maybe you're 8-4 or 7-5. Nobody thought 1-5 was on the table. And so it's like a sucker punch. So I get it, but I as a resident optimist again, and as somebody who probably, like I said, I don't get the anger probably as much as everybody else. I do feel like at least there's some shackles have been removed, and that I don't think, no offense, DJ, but we don't never have to see DJ play quarterback for Florida State again. This marriage was a disaster. It's like when you see 2 friends get married that you like both of them, but you don't think it's going to go well, or whatever the situation, or a business relationship where you just think, I don't know if is that guy really going to work with that guy, or vice versa. And it just, you have impending doom. I just think that this marriage was a disaster, and Florida State needs to move on. So from that standpoint, I'm excited for the second half of the season, just to know it's not going to look like the first half.
Yeah, agreed. And that's where, it's not putting on rosy glasses to say that Brock was impressive. I mean, that he performed the way he did with no running game, and that includes his own legs. They weren't designing plays for the quarterback run that opened up things. Brock, you brought it up today on the JCS hour. Brock, there was anticipation. He was on time with his throws. He was decisive. Was it always pretty? No. but he wanted to. He committed to whatever he was doing, and you could see it. There was a crispness to the offense that there just had not been previous to this weekend, at least with any consistency. Like, I thought he was much more consistent. He knew on fourth down where the sticks were to throw to the sticks. In the red zone, it's third down. He goes for a kill shot. He's not looking to dump it off for 3 yards, and he's trying to let Amari Williams make a play. And then the kid makes the play and doesn't drop the football like so many have. But it's contagious. And only 13 points, there's something there.
The fourth down play, I'm sorry, I just don't want to forget it. But the fourth down run, he knew it was fourth down, and he knew he had to get 10 or 11 yards.
Yep.
Again, man, we're not here to just trash DJ, but it never felt like he was playing the game. It always felt like he was just playing the play. Like, this was what was called. This is where I'm supposed to go with the ball, and we'll see what happens. Like, Brock is playing the game, and that felt a whole lot different.
It did, and that's what they've got to work with. And I know we'll have a discussion about what do you do with Brock and Luke Kromenhawk, who Mike revealed in the postgame. Well, that was not a small admission, Ira, that Mike Norvell said that there was a plan for Kromenhawk under certain circumstances to make it into the game. But we'll talk about that a little bit later tonight here on the Monday Smash. First, we need to talk a little bit more about our awesome sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Again, folks, if you've got any needs for anything from renter's insurance to perhaps insurance that could help you with an event like Milton approaching from the west here, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis has you covered through the entire state of Florida, the entire state of Georgia, the entire state of Alabama. He's a Nole through and through. I know what his emotion is right now. He doesn't need to put it in the chat. I can guess what Russ Voorhis' emotion is about a 1-5 start to Florida State football because he wears garnet and gold on his sleeve, always, in all things. That includes supporting us here at warchant.com. But I'm a customer of State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Ira, you've consulted with him. He's made you smarter in the insurance game. He's just an all-around good guy to reach out to.
Yeah, great resource. And I think the thing about him is, it's a good business for him because I think he's a good-natured person. He wants to help people. He wants to help Noles. And he gets real excited when people reach out for an inquiry, either call the office or go on their website, russvoorhis.com, and inquire and mention that they're Florida State fans and they heard about him on the Smash. He likes that. Like, he'll text me, hey, we got 3 calls. I think he likes the idea of helping other Noles. He's going to help your friends who are not Noles also. He's going to do his job. But I think he definitely likes helping Noles, and he's definitely we recommend him highly.
He's fired up every time that Warchant brings in business. So tell him Warchant call you. And if you're listening on the podcast, I'll spell Russ Voorhis' name for you because that's his website, RUSSV as in victory. We got one of those. ORHIS.com, russvoorhis.com is the website. All right, let's take a look at some of these reactions and temperature checks from the fans. Director Ben behind the scenes, give us where people are right now. Let's see who the first person is who gave us some thoughts. Brad King says, it's just pathetic we're talking about hope. We should be fighting for the ACC. That's fair. So Brad is still in high temperature land? Yeah.
We're still more pissed than we are anything else. That's cool.
But before the season started, which is not that long ago, 5-6 weeks ago, Ira, I mean, what'd you think? 5-1, probably? You're going to replace the record? So if it's 5-1 going on the road to Duke and then playing Miami, everything is before you. And this feels just completely different. Now you're having to play for 2025. So, Brad, we appreciate it, and I can understand the fury. Let's see. Next up in terms of opinions, who do we have here? Tony Cash. I'm not on that fire Norvell train. Fire your damn self. That's my coach. Hang in there, Norvell. No mob, I say. Yeah, okay, so Tony is rallying around Mike, but the question is, would you have replacements in mind, Tony? And Ira, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad he says that because, again, I have a hard time with people who 3 months ago, 2 months ago, thought Norvell was the guy, was the answer for this program for long term, and now are thinking, oh, we got the wrong guy. I mean, he's been here for 4 years. He's done a lot of things right. He turned the program around. I think this offseason, for whatever reasons, he and his staff made a lot of bad decisions. I think he could second guess some of his decisions about who's on his staff. I think that's all fine. But I don't think what has happened over the last 6 to 8 months takes away what the guy has done for the last 4 years. The one thing I would say, though, is, when you think about, just evaluating, I was thinking about this earlier today, just the way as you evaluate a program, it's not so much what it's what happens, but then it's also what is communicated before and after something happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where Mike Norvell probably got in a lot of trouble was, and he spoke to a lot of groups. He spoke to the media. He was very confident. He admitted this last week. I'm an optimist. I'm always thinking the best. So he talked a lot of really positive things during the course of this offseason. And the problem right now is because he's so positive, he doesn't want to own up to how bad things are. At least I think. I mean, he's used words like embarrassed. He's used words like I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, I'm sick. So those they mean something. But I think what the fans want to know is, like, who are you holding people accountable for this? Why is this how has this happened? And he's not going to roll his coaches, and he's not going to roll his players. So I think that's what's leading to some of the frustration from the fan base, is they felt like they were sold a bill of goods, and now he's not owning up to it. Again, he's used some words, I think, that big picture words, but I think people want some specifics, and I don't know if he's ever going to give them, and I don't know how you handle that.
Yeah, he's used the word disconnect at some point earlier this season too, which is, I mean, that's clear. There was a disconnect between the expectations and then the reality. Like, the unfair question he has to answer in a way, Ira, is, do you know what you're looking at?
Right.
Which is wild, because of course he knows what he's looking at.
Right.
However, if you believe that the run game was going to be the basis by which you do everything, and you're bottom 2 in the country right now at running the football, people rightfully are pissed and saying, well, do you know what you're looking at? Because if that was your assessment in the offseason, and the result is not just worse than Power 5, but again, 131st in the country, like, well, how did you reach this conclusion that this is how you were going to build philosophically for this season? You know?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. And so somebody just posted in the chat, I didn't get the name, about burying the wide receiver screen, or punting it to oblivion. Rusty said, "Can we bury the wide receiver screen in the sod cemetery?" It doesn't belong there, man. That's hallowed ground.
Yeah,
it belongs somewhere else. But yeah, those don't work. And again, so going back to the running game, yeah, I would like to believe he knows why it's not working, right? I would like to believe he knows. Is there a way he can kind of let people know that he knows? Because I think that's the root of the frustration is, again, it just feels like does he realize what's going wrong? Is he equipped to fix it? Is he going to be willing to make the changes? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that we're going to get any resolution over that for the next 6 weeks. I think that's going to lead to just more and more angst.
Well, I think the other question too is, does the offense have to look like DJ's offense for Brock? And maybe that's something that coming out of the bye week will change. I'm hoping it does. But what were your thoughts on that? I know that the wrap, you guys had touched on that a little bit about, and I know Corey was feisty about it, but using Brock's legs. Well, I wrote a piece on it. They'd done stuff with Brock, Ira. Like, it wasn't like it's a different quarterback at Memphis. Like, there were things they ran for Brock specifically in emergency work last year, and they didn't really do any of that stuff. It's just kind of wild.
It was strange. And that part of it, I think, again, as we're dissecting, as we're pulling the ingredients out of this misery stew, I think that's one of the other ingredients is things don't seem to make sense. Like, why wouldn't you have tried the Wildcat just to see what it looks like? Why wouldn't you have Brock running more? Why would you have, when you run those bubble screens, why do you always have, it seems like it's always the smaller receivers blocking for the big receiver? Why haven't you played some of these younger guys earlier? Why didn't Brock get a chance earlier? There's so many things that, it's just, there's not, I was thinking about it, there's so much crap running through my head as I'm walking through Costco, William. One thing I thought to myself, if we made a list of all the questions we want answered, how long would that list be? The questions about decisions that were made in terms of the roster, questions about decisions with the staff, questions about play calling, questions about scheme, questions about just the philosophical approach to certain, like, I feel like that list could be over 100 questions. And I just think that speaks to this, and we're not going to get answers. We're not going to get answers probably until after the season.
So it did seem like, and Kayvon, I'll get to that in a second. That's really funny, as Kayvon usually is. But it seemed like Mike was fielding some more pointed things Saturday, and like the temperature raised in the room. in the press room. You were part of that Q&A with Mike Ira just on certain questions about, situational choices. It could be time management before the half. It could be quarterback stuff, big picture things. How do you sense his mindset, at least entering the bye versus some of these other press conferences? Well, the 4 other press conferences after losses prior to Saturday night.
One thing I want to say, and I haven't written this because it would be laughed at. I mean, at this point, because it's such a, in the big picture of things, it's not that big of a deal. There's a feeling inside the program that in like 3 of the last 4 games, 3 of the last losses before this Clemson game, that they really got screwed on some huge calls. The face mask on that punt, which, they insist that the ACC people I've talked to told me the ACC came back immediately. It was like, yeah, we screwed that up. Well, that's an awful call to screw up, man. Florida State had just scored to make it a 2-score game. They force a punt. If you punt, if they drive down and score again, now there's real game pressure on SMU. Instead, you call a phantom face mask, and now I'm not going to say the defense quit, but man, you're asking them a lot at that point.
Yep.
And so I think there was a phantom hold in a game on a huge play the week before, and maybe in the Memphis game. There's like 3 huge calls, like game-changing calls in 3 of their last 3 losses, that it's like, this is a team that can't have that. Like, they're already kind of hanging by a string just trying to get something positive, and they feel like the feeling inside the program is that even when they've been close or done something right and had a chance to make a play, they've gotten screwed by the refs. And so I think that frustration has got to be at an all-time high, because not only is everything he thought about this team not right, guys are not responding the way he hoped they would respond, and you're kind of getting screwed in some situations by the refs on a team that can't handle that. And so I just think he's at a point now where everywhere he turns is misery, and so, I hope, he could find some clarity, because I think that might be affecting some of his decisions. But yeah, there are a couple of questions that, and part of it is, man, we're asking questions because fans want us to ask tough questions. I don't know. When he was asked, I think Kurt asked him, do you kind of regret not playing some of these younger guys earlier? Well, what's he going to say? I mean, and I'm not ripping Kurt. Kurt's, everybody's just trying to speak. We're trying to give the fans what they want. Like, ask some questions that the fans want answers to. Yep. Well, man, he's not going to like that question. Or when I'm asking him, man, do you have any idea what's going on in your running game? Every week, he gets more and more frustrated by that. So I just think he has been nothing but great to the media. And it doesn't matter if he is or if he isn't, but I don't think that reflects on anything other than just, man, he's just had it to hear with this team.
Yeah, clearly. Well, I mean, and he said that a couple of times. There was a comment, I think, at a Monday press conference maybe 3-4 weeks ago, when he said, I have to ask the guys, like, what are you doing outside of the time that you're here in meetings and practices? Like, are you putting in the extra work? Like, to me, that was a red flag. That means I don't believe you are, which is, how did it get there? And Ira, I agree. That type of article, you're reporting it for people in the chat. You're not saying that Florida State lost because of calls, right. Saying they believe. So my retort to that would not be at you, but at them. How is the margin so thin against Memphis and Georgia Tech and Boston College?
That's why I can't write it. That's 100% why I can't write it. But it's also like, man, it's like, man, like in a boxing match, and it's like, you just need something to go. You're just hanging on for dear life. And then you can't also, have the referee, do something that hurts you or whatever. I mean, like you finally get the guy on the ropes, and the referee comes in and breaks you off of him when you feel like you've got a chance to do something. It's just like, that's how this whole year has been, man. Like, and again, I'm not making excuses for Norvell at all. They clearly made a ton of mistakes, but getting Destin Hill hurt was awful for this team. This team has had a lot more injuries than last year's team did. In terms of guys, being out for the season or being out for several weeks. Hakeem Williams wasn't available for the first month. I mean, there's just so many things. It's like this team, it's like they're underwater, and they can't get to solid ground, and it's just more and more water coming on. Again, I'm not saying it's making excuses, but like, man, they need something to go right for them. Even I mean, the stupid fumbles go the other way. I mean, just everything. The interception off Morlock's helmet, turns it goes right to their guy. I mean, like this has been a very unlucky team, along with not a good team.
How do we create some luck? Kayvon suggests line up Mastro at quarterback. Quick kick on first down, flip the field. The opposition will tire out after 4 99-yard touchdown drives. Then we'll have them right where we want them. It did seem, Kayvon, thank you for that. Like once Clemson got to a certain place, Ira, they didn't think, well, they celebrated. They didn't do this on purpose. They kick a field goal to get to 20. Like just 20 total, and they cut over to Klubnik and Dabo just celebrating like this, cheering on the kicker after the drive. And I'm like, man, I don't think they're doing that for that reason. But if I'm playing Florida State right now, sadly, when I get to 20, I do kind of put both arms in the sky and think that
this is a dub.
Job well done. It's lean times right now. Brett says, is there any possibility that there will be any coaching changes before December? I think not. Personally, that's Brett's aside. I mean, when's the Florida game? Isn't Thanksgiving late this year? Let's see.
Yeah, but it's not December. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, man, maybe there's something right after the Florida game, but it wouldn't shock me if it wouldn't shock me if something happened before the season's over, but I don't feel like that's Norvell's style. I just again, a lot of times when you do that, it's at a coordinator level, a play caller level, and I just don't see how that's possible with this staff. I mean, you'd have to be, Norvell's not going to fire himself. It would have to be Adam Fuller as a play caller on defense, but then you're going to give it to Randy Shannon. I don't think the fan base is going to be real fired up about that. Right. I don't know who else. I mean, I guess John Papuchis has been a DC in the past. He'd be an option, I guess. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, firing. I know Jeff talked today about firing Atkins. I don't know, man. Is it just for retribution? Like, I don't know what the end goal of firing somebody in the midseason is.
The only thing I can maybe extrapolate. The Florida game is on the 30th, so December 1st would be that overnight, and then signing day, the early signing period is Wednesday the 4th. So it's like the Wednesday after the Florida game is when the early signing day is. Like that's if you've got somebody who's got qualifications that is not currently employed, then maybe you could make a switcheroo there and try to create some juice before the early signing period. But to me, right. I mean, there's no good options here, Ira. This is another place where I'm not saying that Florida State is screwed. But last year, the early signing period was basically around Christmas, and this year it's on the 4th of December. So if you're going to be there's some urgency there, and I think that would be maybe a reason why. If you're trying to salvage something on the signing day itself. If not, then it almost feels like 2 months from now, it'll be good if there's a lot of Florida State targets that don't sign in the early signing period, because that'll give you a couple extra months maybe to make one last run and one last pitch.
Also, Alex Atkins has Solomon Thomas committed, big 5-star offensive lineman. And Mario Nash, who came on an official visit this weekend, was committed to Mississippi State, took his official visit to Florida State, and now is decommitted from Mississippi State earlier today. I'm not saying he's coming to Florida State, but that seems like a positive development for FSU. And listen, man, it shouldn't be hard to sell high school offensive linemen right now. Like, it shouldn't be hard to tell guys, hey, you might be able to play here in a year or so if you look at this offensive line.
Can they make them better when they get here is that follow-up question. Jeremy asks, and thank you for the contribution, do you think Mike has had a serious talk with Alford and Collins yet, or will that be after the season? This would be an interesting place for it, Ira, because it is the bye week halfway through the year. I mean, what do you think?
I think there's been conversations. I've heard that there are some, influential people who want to have a word with Alford and Collins and kind of express their frustrations, and that's understandable. And I'm sure that they're talking to Norvell about, like, what are your plans? Like, what right now, what are you thinking? But again, I don't know. It's always a weird thing to me in terms of, administrators coming in and talking to a football coach about what he's going to do in the middle of the season, because I'm sure he's in Mike Norvell's mind, he's still evaluating what this season is. So it doesn't seem likely that, they're going to give him an ultimatum in the middle of the season. You were 13-0 a year ago. You signed off on all these contracts. I just don't feel like Florida State's in the place right now to have like these ultimatum conversations during the season. I could be wrong, but I think it's more of just constant conversations Where are things at? Where's it going? What do you need? Because they have to help him get out of this.
Yeah, the what do you need part of it is very important because that also implies commitment, beyond the next season. Because I think that's a big question for any incoming talent. And by that, I mean not just players, I'm talking about coaching potential hires. They want to know that they're not going to be switching laundry in 12 months. That's a big deal. Esquin 67 theory. Norvell told Jordan to run versus North Alabama to get the offense moving. Now he's hesitant to send a quarterback downfield. That's the damning thing about that year. And we all know it, Ira. Is like they were clearly holding Jordan back unless they needed to, break that out. Like the Duke game in the second half of the Duke game on a Saturday night. Like they clearly said, all right, Jordan, turn it loose. The second quarter against Clemson, Jordan used his legs a hell of a lot more. But it's almost like they were saving that for down the line. And obviously they needed it, sadly, against North Alabama because nothing was going right early in that game, and the rest is history. Do you think Mike's afraid because of that moment, or is that probably?
I mean, it's a fine theory. I can't say whether it's right or wrong. I mean, I've always operated under the idea that Jordan decided on his own, I need to keep it, because he had not been keeping it on any of the zone replays, and it felt like to me, hey, this offense is stagnant. It's a sleepy game before the Florida game. Nobody really wants to be here. And it's one thing in a game like that if you're just not scoring points, but North Alabama was scoring. And so now you're in a hole. And so I feel like he probably felt, I always felt like Jordan took that on his own. It's possible, man. If that's true, I'm sure that would weigh on you. But one thing on that topic, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but one thing on that topic, again, man, I think it's awesome and it's great for Norvell. I don't think Norvell's asking them to do it, but I think it's great for Norvell that not just Jordan came back for his second game of the season. Johnny Wilson being there, I thought was huge. Kalen DeLoach being there. The more of those guys, showing their support for Mike Norvell, I think is got to be good for the players on the team, but also, the fan base to see that, man, like those guys, the guys on that team from last year adore Mike Norvell. And it's weird they know him a way better than any of us do.
Yeah.
And to me, that would make me slow my roll a little bit about, wanting to go after him.
Well, the coming back for 2023 wasn't just because of the advent of NIL and the work of the Battle's End for retention purposes. Like, yeah, that's a part of it and a significant part of it. But Ira, they wanted to be back in Mike Norvell's program for another year.
They could have teamed up. They could have teamed up to go to X school.
Right.
Like,
Right, exactly. There was a reason. Like, that was real. That culture that you watched and they put out in the cinematic recaps was real. I kind of do think they should always put them out. Like, you shouldn't just put them out only when you win, but I get it. You're 1-5. Come on now. James says, go ahead, Director Ben. James says, outside of experience, what do you think Mike Norvell saw in DJ that he didn't see in Brock? Well, this is at the point of the decision to bring him in. I mean, it's experience, it's poise, it's knowledge of multiple offenses, a cannon for an arm. And I'm sure they thought, Ira, because they made Jordan Travis into a better quarterback than he was 2 years ago. We get our hands on this guy with this skill set, and we're going to be able to run the football. Watch out what happens. That would be my assumption.
100%. I mean, this is, and you want to believe that Mike, any coach you like, you want to believe they're above this. And I want to believe that Mike Norvell's above this, but I don't know if any of us are above this. When you have success at a high level, it's easy to fool yourself into believing it's about you. And sometimes it's about circumstances. It's about the people that work with you. And I know in my own life, there have been times, whether in work or even personal relationships, whatever, when I start feeling good about myself and I feel like, man, I nailed that, or, I'm doing great in this class, or whatever it is, a lot of time that sets you up for big mistakes. And I think Mike Norvell, coming off of 13-0, thought he could turn DJ into something more. And I think part of the reason for sticking with him a little bit longer was not just to kind of not admit that he was wrong, but I'm sure he probably feels bad for DJ's a great kid. Like, there's nobody I've talked to in the last year and a half since he's been on Florida State's radar, 12 months, whatever it is, that has said anything negative about him as a person. Like, and so I think, there's probably some responsibility as a coach when you bring a kid in for his final year of college football and it goes like this. It can't feel great to be like, hey, dude, you're done. I'm moving on to the next guy. Now, at the same time, His responsibility is to his team and his fan base and his school and the people that write his checks. I get it, but I could see that being something that kind of weighed on him in terms of making a decision. But as far as playing the field, man, in time you've been out there not as many practices during the season, but you were out there all preseason and some during the season. Honestly, I never felt like a big difference no matter who was in at quarterback. Like the offense just, especially once the season got going, the offense really has struggled in practice. Whether Brock was a quarterback or whether DJ was a quarterback, there haven't been a lot of really good days for this offense. Once they started getting some injuries on the offensive line, now in the preseason, I thought DJ looked better overall. But the last few weeks, it hasn't been marginally better. I just think he thought DJ would turn it around.
Yeah, I thought from what I saw in spring and fall camps, I thought Brock was streaky. The best of Brock was pretty good, but it wasn't nearly consistent enough, and DJ was by far the more consistent player. But, the thing that we're talking about,
for sure.
The thing we're talking about so often is that, once you get into one game performance and 2 and 3, well, those have to matter more than the consistency level of practice. BF Noles asks a question here, and thank you for the contribution, BF Noles. Did we overextend ourselves financially to the point where we're saddled with the situation for better or worse? It's hard to say. If they need to turn over some rocks and find some money to make things happen, Ira, I'm confident they will. It's just that, personally, if it ever got to the level of like PE equity, I don't know that I'd be thrilled with that. But they are spending a lot of money in a lot of places, and they did not anticipate to have to spend money on something like staff overhaul this year. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's have they overextended themselves financially? Yeah, probably. I mean, I think a lot of schools are right now because everybody wants to be positioned for when college football is realigned and there's a super league or whatever it is. Everybody wants to be at that table. So yeah, I think they are to some degree, but I don't think the way that question was written, it makes it sound like there's no money to make changes if they need to. I don't think that's the case. I think they will throw good money after bad if they have to, because they know they have to fix this. So in the short term, I think they're not going to hesitate to make changes on the staff if they need to. And then, you're talking about a couple years down the road, probably, if they have to wear it with Mike Norvell, if the next year plus looks like this, then I think they would have to do that as well. But I wrote this in a column last week. Failure in football is not an option. If they don't succeed in football, everything in this athletic program comes apart. Yep. And so they're going to try to fix it no matter what.
That's when they bring David Coburg back to help tighten the ship a little bit. No, this private jet, no way. This recruiting trip, no way. We've got a ton of questions here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, I am told, by director Ben Spicer behind the scenes. We'll be back in 15 seconds to rapid fire those over the next 25 minutes.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
We really do appreciate audience participation on a night like tonight, and we look forward to documenting what comes next between now and the Duke game. Remember, that's a Friday night game for Florida State, next on the docket on the road at Duke. Troy Knoll has the first question in the queue, and he says, which games left on the schedule do you think we can win? Well, with Brock at quarterback, Ira, I feel a little bit different. I don't know.
The math changes. Yeah, man.
Go ahead. What's your list?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, after SMU, I was thinking maybe Charleston Southern might be about it. Right now, dude, I mean, I think they can beat. I think they can win at Duke. I think they can win. They can beat North Carolina at home. I think they can beat Florida, and I think they can beat Charleston Southern. I don't think Miami's as good as clearly Miami's not as good as everybody else thought. But hey, listen, even if it's a close game, the ACC replay office is going to make sure Miami wins that game. So don't worry about that game as much. I think that's probably going to be a loss. And then Notre Dame is going to be a really tough task. But man, he gives you a shot, dude. I think he gives you a shot in every game. That's what's so frustrating about the first half of the season is, man, if you knew you had that in Brock and that's who he's going to be, you definitely could have won at least 3, maybe 4 games in that first half.
Years ago on the Jeff Cameron show, I came up with my own equation and theory. All right. It was the Okaro White participation theory.
Carl White.
Yes, it was.
I can't remember this. I need to hear
it was participation equals success. Don't foul early in the game. That's all it was. Just
you're living in a fantasy land then.
Yeah, it was participation equals success. The oversimplified Okaro White equation. For me on offense, the oversimplified Florida State equation is Brock Glenn plus Wildcat means you have a shot, equals a shot in many games. Maybe they'll break that out. But the question was can win, not will win. I echo your sentiments. I think you got 4 that you can win down the stretch, probably 2 that might be out of reach right now. Devin says and asks, Ira, what were your observations on DJ during the game? Was he giving advice for Brock, raising him up after each drive? What was he doing from what you saw?
Devin, I do try to observe a lot of things on the sideline. I didn't spend a lot of time on DJ, though, and I apologize for that. He was down there. He had the big cast. I did notice him after the game taking pictures with Clemson players. But I didn't see much. Mostly, man, I just saw Brock with Luke and, Tony Tokars and, the offensive staff, just they were really focused, man. That was again, man, Brock, when you're trying to figure out why Brock would be, I'm not a big fan of the gamer tag, but he is a guy that wants to compete. Like we've talked about that since day one. He's on we saw him in fourth quarter drills, whatever they call him, tour of duty. When he first got here, like you could tell he's a competitor, wants to compete. And so now that this door is open, like he was just been very focused, and Luke was also. So they were all business. I didn't see them talking a whole lot to DJ during the game. I'm not saying he didn't. I just didn't notice it.
The thing gamer is going to come up more about Brock Glenn. I hope you're ready for that.
And I know, and I don't love it, but it is what it is, I guess.
David asks, Ira, will you ask Mike about the read option minus the option and why it keeps being called?
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Ira? I think he kind of was asked that, wasn't he?
He has been asked. Corey's premise was pretty funny when he asked him about he's like, Cade Klubnik had some success when he ran the ball.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I don't think he loved that one. We'll ask him again. I'm also going to ask Alex Atkins. I think we speak to him tomorrow, just about individually this offensive line. Have guys regressed? Because it doesn't make any sense. Is it just the chemistry has been bad, or individual guys? Like if you grade them individually, we see the PFF grades, which take them or leave them, right. but individual players, I think, have gotten worse. But I want to see what he says about that.
It's hard, Ira, because when you have guys for 4 years or 3 years where they're on the field a lot, I mean, you can tell when they get better or worse. And it's just, they got better last year. That's the weird thing. Is like I feel like Maurice Smith, who was injured, was better than this year's Maurice Smith, who looked healthy and fresh in camp. It makes little to no sense. Rusty Bronco, what a great name. If we lose to Duke, Norvell will have broken every FSU record. Lost to a Division II school, lost to Duke, worst record, losing season in the drop-off. This was part of the tanking temperature, I think, and that's where Rusty is right now. His temperature is, give me one thing, I mean, we lost the bowl streak some years ago. We still have this Duke deal, and that's what comes up next. So, Ira, I'll ask you, I'll turn it into a question. Percentage chance that the Duke streak lives on after next Friday?
Man, that is one that I think is important. It's a silly one, but I think it's important. I think it says something. It's like, what was it? North Carolina hadn't lost to Clemson in basketball in like 50 years or whatever it was.
Yep.
I just, those are ones, man, you need to, or Florida started losing to Kentucky. They had gone forever without losing Kentucky. I just think those are seminal moments. Like they need to keep that streak. So hopefully they'll play hard, man. I think if they play hard, if Brock plays like he did Saturday, you've got a bye week, man. I think Florida State's got a legit chance to win that game. My concern is, do you at some point, again, like does the defense? How long is the defense going to keep doing what they've been doing? We'll see.
We can't be coming home to the defense empty-handed too much longer. These possessions need not be empty. The one thing I'll say, maybe this juices up camp listen to me, practices a little bit higher. It's just, the second half after Brock had made some plays and proven that he was in it, like he was invested. Yeah. You saw guys tapping his shoulder pads, tapping his helmet before drives, during drives, in the middle of plays. There was one throw where he missed Malik Benson, and Malik had awful body language, and Brock ran over to him, and then they exchanged a handshake of sorts of like, "Hey, man, I need you with me." Like, maybe that kind of back and forth is something that allows guys to play with a little bit more confidence and prepare. Even more importantly, to prepare with a little bit more importance.
Man, I don't think you can overstate that. I honestly don't. I think Hakeem, when they had the interception, Hakeem came over. Brock talked to the quarterback, the staff. Hakeem came over. The receivers coach, Ron Dugans, was talking to him. They were kind of explaining that Hakeem, I think, realized he read it wrong. He went over to Brock and apologized to Brock, and Brock was like, no, everything's fine. When Maurice Smith had his bad snaps, Brock went to Maurice to kind of tell him, hey, man, it's fine. I got you. Like, that stuff matters. I mean, if there was one thing that, when you're looking for reasons why it didn't work for DJ, one reason it felt like is it just never really felt like that he was totally one of them. Not his fault. He just came in. He's a 1-year rental. But if Brock lays it on the line and he's one of them, that can bring out some of that. And I don't think that's not for nothing, man. I think that stuff matters.
That fourth down run would be a good thing to put on film in front of the whole team on loop, right? Yeah. Wes in the Villages says, we could use some thoughts and prayers here in Central Florida. The Villages is going to get some nasty weather. Yes, that is coming. And I said this earlier today on the JCS. If your local officials are telling you to get out, please do. The roadways are already locked up. I'm hearing about gasoline issues, supply issues in that regard coming to the state because of mass evacuations over the next couple of days. Not a fear and consumption thing at all. That's not that's not our lane. Our hearts are with you throughout the state footprint, though, Ira, because it looks bad.
It definitely does. My daughter, who's in Tampa, is on her way up here right now. She should be getting here, thankfully, pretty soon. And it looks bad, man. I'm not a big move because I'd grown up in South Florida, man. When hurricanes were coming all the time, a lot of times there were times we packed up and went to Orlando, and it came there. Last week or 2 weeks ago with Helene, I know some people went up to North Carolina and it came up there. They're tough. It's tough to know what's right. But this one seems like, man, it is on a collision course with Central Florida. So if you guys can find higher ground, please do. If you feel good about where you're at, that's fine. But, definitely take every precaution because this one looks really bad.
It's moving due east. It's just so strange and eerie. All my people down there that are watching, I care about you. I hope you're doing okay. B Sizzle, Coach Mike Norvell needs to make sure both Brock and Luke get reps. Okay. All right. We'll see if we got more questions. See if we can squeeze this in here because Ira is pushing for, and he makes a good argument for, Brock and Luke Kromenhawk to both get exposure down the stretch. In what way would you do it, Coach Ira? How would you draft that in?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna write about this a little bit in something I'm writing for tomorrow, probably on the site. But yeah, I just think to me, you go back to, and again, old time Florida State fans are always going to bring this up. Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan and what they did. But I think the key to that was the reason it was successful was because they complemented each other and because they were friends. Like they got along well. There have been times, man, there's a lot of times where quarterback competitions don't get along. They don't like each other. I remember going into the locker room when Chris Ricks and Adrian McPherson were here. And, I think they were amicable, but, going in and talking to them in the locker room after some of those games, and somebody thought they were going to start. The other guy thought he was going to start. And it was just not a good situation. I feel like this should be a good situation. I think Brock and Luke have a good relationship. I don't know them well, but I feel like it's a healthy relationship. If I'm Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars, I would say, listen, Brock's been in the system longer. He's going to get the starts. He's going to be the main guy. But Luke, we are going to get you in and give Luke some opportunities. That game, I think what happened in that game was I think he intended to get Luke some opportunities. You're down 17-0. You give Brock one more chance, he scores. That would have been a weird time to take him out. And at that point, it kind of you getting into the game flow. But I would definitely look to play Luke, and I would encourage them to see this as a chance. Or hey, guys, this is your team for the second half of the season. Like we're only going to go so far as you guys help take us. So I'm going to give you both opportunities, and then once you get into games, if one guy's playing better than the other, maybe that guy gets more reps as the game goes on. And then the next week, it may be the other guy. But I would, because they both have to be smart enough to know that neither one of them can just be handed the job for sure going into 2025. And if they both play well, or one or both plays well this fall, maybe he's not tempted to go bring in a transfer portal quarterback. So I think it's in their best interest to stay, to both get opportunities, and then let that carry over into the spring. And then if you got to make a decision after the spring, that's one thing. It's not like either of these guys are 4 years into college where they have to, like Tate Rodemaker, I understood his decision. You're bringing in a 1 year rental, and he's only got 1 year left. That made sense. I feel like you could convince Brock and Luke to let it run through the spring. But to do that, I think you need to give them each chances in the fall.
So Rusty falls back on the cliche. If you have two quarterbacks, means you don't have one. I don't know that I would go that far, but and folks, I'm not a paid representative of Brock Glenn, but I'm going to take the other side on this particular one. It's just that Brock has been put in some horrible circumstances up to this point, and including Saturday. It's like, okay, now you're going to give me a turn, because he's got, he had surgery on his hand, and so go get him, Brock, against Clemson. I just thought the performance was good enough to warrant him getting another shot, start to finish. Like, I thought he owned the moment, and he did so without a running game, and they didn't look confused, and it looked on time. Like, Ira, if it was dysfunctional start to finish on Saturday, and it looks like we're just discombobulated, all right, I'm for opening up and widening the field a little bit. Maybe Trevor Jackson comes in that situation too. But I thought Brock, through merit, deserves another shot against Duke. And I mean, like, I planned for him start to finish, but I do find it interesting that anytime Brock comes up, it feels like, from the outside at least, you've got a better memory on this than me, but Tuesday's interview, Wednesday, and then the post game, like, it feels like it's always, how did he do? Well, they are is like the response each time. And I
would do the same thing, man. In 2024, I would do the same thing. I just listen, man. If Luke feels like Brock is definitely the guy, then Luke's. I'm not going to speak for the guy, but it would be very normal in this day and age for that quarterback in Luke's position to decide, okay, well, I'm going to go find somewhere else to play because this guy's in my class. And if you've decided he's your guy, and it's not like I've invested 5 years here or 4 years here, it's very normal. So if I'm Mike Norvell, I've got to be conscious about that. I think they're constantly, it's funny. I've seen a couple of different, because we do coach speak, watching some of these other coaches' press conferences, I've heard a few coaches talk about how you're constantly having to re-recruit your players. Yeah. Dave Clawson last week at Wake Forest was like, I think it was Dave Clawson. It might have been somebody else, but they were like, you know what? I think it was Clawson. He's like, you know what? If you don't want to be here, don't be here. I'm not going to re-recruit you. If you, because this is that point after 4 or 5 games where kids are making these decisions, and he's like, I'm done. I'm done playing that game. You're here. We're going to coach you. If you don't want to be here, then you got to leave. I get that philosophy, but man, I'm not letting my 5-star quarterback walk out the door because I think Brock Glenn might have it. Because it's not like you could be 100% sure that Brock Glenn's the answer. So
I hear you, but you won't know unless you play him more.
Right? Like, no, I'm fine with that.
The thing is that I would hope that Luke, and this is where you could retort and say, kids aren't anymore, Tom, and that's fair. But I would hope that Luke is of the mind that even if Brock got a hell of a lot more run these next 6 games, that spring camp is an open battle between the two of them. Like, you could take it to spring, take your battle. It's not that I wouldn't play Luke at all, but it feels like they fall back on Brock by default. And then the moment he does something positive, we're going to split the reps. Like, geez, if I'm Brock, I'm out. At that point, I'm like, can I get a fair shake here at some point? But if they're friends and it's communicated clearly beforehand that this is what is going to happen, then maybe it's got a shot. It feels like Brock might not get a fair shake here and then go somewhere else and play well. And you're like, golly, I wish they just let him play a few games in a row.
No, that's fair. And I'm not saying like the Duke game, you don't like give Brock the most of the action or maybe all of the action. But I just think at some point you've got to get Luke in some of these games to see what he is. Otherwise, man, if Brock plays pretty well, but doesn't get much better, and Luke walks out the door, man, now you're answering some really tough questions. So my point is, I guess the biggest point is, I don't think Norvell bringing up Luke is a sign he doesn't believe in Brock. It's just, man, this is a tightrope these coaches walk nowadays.
Yeah.
And you've got two kids basically in the same class, a true freshman and a redshirt freshman, and one of them's going to play. You got to walk that fine line.
Brad King said something a little bit earlier that I agree with. Like, man, okay, so now we're opening up to multiple dudes. Man, we were really holding on to that DJ thing with a death grip that we weren't going to give Brock any time. Like, now that we're off of DJ, we can throw the population at him. Like, geez.
Well, and I wasn't in favor of that. I mean, I thought they should have given DJ some opportunities earlier. But that doesn't mean I would say now don't do it because you didn't do it then. I was in favor of it then too.
Justin asks, last few questions for tonight here on the Monday Smash, and thanks to everybody for participating. My question is, what's the difference between last year's FSU team and this year's Miami team? It just screams bad coaching, relying on picking up good talent, no development. I mean, the quarterback through line seems to be there for the moment until further notice, Ira. Like, it's almost like the Jimbo situation where it's like, are you anything when Jameis isn't your quarterback? Mike's got to at least wear those questions for the moment. Success in Memphis be damned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is very few teams are good without a good quarterback. I mean, unless you're Wisconsin, unless you've got an incredible offensive line and a great running game, you got to have a great quarterback. And Florida State is probably never going to be one of those schools that has an amazing offensive line. It just doesn't feel like that's in the cards anymore for whatever reason. Maybe it will be at some point down the line. But if you don't have an unbelievable offensive line, you better have a great quarterback, and Florida State doesn't, and that's what got Jimbo into trouble, and it's getting Norvell into trouble. And again, that's where I got back to earlier. Coaches. I mean, it's hard to evaluate quarterbacks. I get it. There's no sure things, but man, you can't miss there repeatedly. And if Brock or Luke doesn't work out, then I mean that'll be the end of Mike Norvell's tenure. I mean, because one of those guys has to hit.
Yep, agreed. Well, and also to your point too, this would be the argument for playing both of them. I need to know that I don't need to go in the portal to go save my job. If I'm, you know what I mean? If I'm Mike Norvell, I'm like, I got to know if I'm going to stick with you
right.
two, I better know what the hell you two are.
And the last part about that comment, and he mentioned development. Development's it's a weird word for me because I get it, man. I understand that coaches are supposed to develop players. But I also believe some people are more talented than other people. And you could try to develop – Florida State's been trying to develop a couple of these receivers and tight ends for years and years and years, and it hasn't happened. And I don't know if that's because they're not good at developing. It may just be that they didn't realize those guys are not very good or they're not going to be very good. I think, man, when we watch preseason camp and you watch Landon Thomas in the spring – people forget we don't even talk about the fact that Landon Thomas didn't really practice for most of camp. Yep. But in the spring, he looked really, really good, and now we're seeing what he is. Amari Williams, we thought he was going to be a defensive end. They started letting him run routes, and you're like, oh, that's different. Development to me is just a little bit overrated. Get better players. Evaluate and sign better players, and you're going to look a lot better.
That would be the Colonel Nathan R. Jessup response from the fan base. I don't care if you can't develop or you can't recruit him. Either way, I don't give a damn. Get out of here. I don't care. Sacknell says, Tom Ira, how about those freshman tight ends? What's your thoughts on them going forward? Yeah, a total bright spot, right?
Yeah. Love them. And really, and again, the one question with Amari, he's undersized. Can he really block anybody? Landon Thomas, we had those questions about him in the spring. He'll put his nose in there, man. He's not afraid to block somebody, and that is half the battle, man. Just get there and just get in front of the dude. That's one of the areas where they've really been lacking. So, love those guys, and also, man, Mekhi Danzy, and I know he dropped the pass, but keep getting him out there, dude. That dude has a gear that nobody else on that team has, especially without Jalen Lucas. A bunch of others, Luane McCoy. BJ Gibson. I mean, there's a bunch of really talented receivers on this team, playmakers on this team.
I feel like BJ Gibson wants to block. Just the way he attacks the sled. I noticed that in camp. Like, oh God, he's strong. Like
he's a strong kid.
They go through the line, and it's the veteran receivers all the way to freshmen. And the one that popped the most to me was BJ. Like, oh, look at that guy. That guy he's got physicality and want to. And that's the thing. I don't always like the go back and watch trope. It's like I watched the game once, we lost. I don't want to watch again. If you're the fan, like I get that. the perimeter blocking, Ira. Like Mike Norvell isn't kidding about it being awful. There's no will. There's hardly any consistent will, and that drives my ass crazy. Like that's wrong.
It's awful. It's awful, and that's why people are so mad at the bubble screens, because they don't ever get blocked up. And even some of the other screens where and again, I mean, I like the young Otto. I mean, I think he's going to be a nice player, but he gets out there and whiffs on a block. I mean, they're not good enough to run some of the screens because they don't fill their assignments.
Well, and it's a tough ask for his first game. I'm gonna defend Otto. I'm always
I love Otto, but it's just like, man, if you just get in front of that guy.
They're pulling him for protection to roll the pocket, and like there's already somebody crashing down from they're out wide 9, whatever you want to call it, unblocked by the left tackle, and Otto's having to pull and try and pass protect for Brock. Nobody's fast enough because they don't honor the downfield pass. I'm like, oh God, Otto's getting hung out to dry here. But then also he got put on his butt a couple times as a redshirt freshman would against Clemson. Tony says, let me throw this out there. Maybe let Hakeem block for some small guy and not the other way around. Tony, it makes no sense.
I don't even want, like, I am the first one to admit I do not know football X's and O's like a lot of people who do this. It's not my expertise. It's not my main interest. I have a rudimentary knowledge, but I just can't understand. I just don't understand why that is the case. I feel like there's got to be a reason, Tom. I just don't know what that reason could be.
Well, either way, I don't give a damn what your reason is. It's the first throw to Hakeem when he was back healthy. Jaylen Brown was leading the way. You didn't have enough film earlier in the season to tell you that kid can't do it. Like, he can help you. Jaylen Brown can do things,
and hopefully he will be more physical later in his career. But it ain't now.
I mean, geez, it's like asking a middle schooler to go play varsity and be like, all right, go block that corner, young man. Like, come on, dude. Royce Thompson, if this was the drop-off, when does FSU contend for another conference championship under Norvell? 2026? This is an era where you can retool on the fly, but I also know what I'm saying out loud after this year's portal work, Ira. But, I mean, it's possible next year, but probably 26. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the ACC is wide open. I mean, I think that every year it's probably going to be pretty wide open. Clemson's Clemson, but there's 2 spots open in that game, and you're not stuck in the same division with them anymore. You look at some of the teams right now in this conference that are undefeated or only have 1 loss that I don't think are juggernauts. So I think you can get back to a level where immediately, I think you can get to a level. If you've got a good quarterback, you can get to a level where you can beat the Pitts, the Syracuses, the NC States. I mean, this conference is this conference. You can get in the ACC championship game and then see what happens. So I don't think the hill is not that high to climb to get back there. I don't believe.
BC just lost to Virginia this weekend. I mean, Good God, that BC team that had their way with Florida State just went to Charlottesville and scored 13 points and lost to Virginia. So
it is a wide open conference this year, and it's going to be a wide open conference next year. So get a quarterback, and I think you can compete.
Philip asked a question about what we think about quarterbacks and the portal. We've kind of touched on this, but he says he hopes that we just keep giving Brock and Luke the reps, the time to build with the homegrown talent. I mean, after last year's decision-making where it got you, I have to think, Ira, if they have a pulse on film for more than just one night, that has to be the plan going into next year, right? I mean, got to be.
Well, you would hope. And again, man, because it needs to be the plan. Because here's the thing. This year, it only made sense to go with DJ if you thought you're going to make another run to get in the playoff. And I kind of got it. We got it because they got snubbed. That sucked. And you have the NIL money there, and Florida State now is attractive to some of these players who, that they were highly touted coming out of high school. And you get DJ, and it felt like, okay, let's give it a run, see if you can win 10 games, get in the playoff. But going into next year, that's not going to be the same deal. You've got a lot of positions you've got to kind of reevaluate the line of scrimmage. We have to see what happens with some of these defensive linemen. There's a bunch of guys on this team. Remember at the end of the draft last year, we were thinking that, hey, man, they might have 9 or 10 guys drafted again next year.
Yep.
That ain't happening. Oh. So a lot of those guys are going to have to reevaluate, and you may have more guys staying, which would be good. But, yeah, at the end of the day, you have to hope that they didn't hit on – look, they didn't hit on – I'm not going to blame them for Chuba and Tate. That was the transition class. but they didn't hit on AJ Duffy. They haven't hit, we'll have to see if they hit on these guys, but you'd really like to believe that they didn't, they don't have to go out and get another portal quarterback.
And how much are they going to spend on the portal versus, and if there are guys that want to come back, they got to care to come back and play. That's the thing is,
you're right.
Maybe you're better off going your own separate ways. These are all heavy conversations, but right now, everybody, we're enjoying a bye week. Hopefully you watch football that doesn't include wide receiver screens and plays being blown up in the backfield left and right. We really do appreciate all of your contributions tonight in the chat, the questions, the temperature taking. We hope you found the safe space productive. And I've got a little homework for you this week. If you can find the energy, turn on a little bit of music and write yourself a goodbye letter to DJU as the starting quarterback at Florida State. It'll give you the closure that you need in this situation to move forward and move past it.
We wish him the best. We wish him the best wherever he ends up playing his next time in football.
He might get another year. So maybe somebody give him a $500,000 to play in Conference USA next year. You never know. Godspeed to all of you out there as well. He's Ira. I'm Tom. Thank you to everybody who contributed, to Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes. Awesome work as always. And thanks to State Farm agent Russ Voorhis for always working with us here at warchant.com. RussVoorhis.com is the website. Wake Up Warchant coming up tomorrow. Seminole headlines coming up tomorrow. Practice coverage. They are hitting the fields again, talking to the coordinators. All available, Warchant TV, warchant.com. We will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.